All right, here we are, match 4 of week 1. We have Bel-Hathor University, High Elves versus Princess Peaches, the Amazons. This one is actually my match. I was the High Elf player here, and you can see that I won 2-0, but it was actually a pretty fun match. I would say that there were some, uh, you know, definitely some plays that I did not see coming. And it was a lot more fun than playing against AI, which is what I usually do when I play this game. Uh, High Elves are generally more of a high ag passing team. Amazons are kind of just a human team, but they have more blitzers, and they have the ability to have every single player start with dodge, which is really nice to begin with. So I'll go ahead and go over the two teams real quick. There's not a whole lot to say, to be honest. They're not very strange like some of the other teams. Pretty straightforward, but I might as well show you the players anyway. High Elf players tend to be more expensive. Linemen here are 70k, whereas linemen on most of the other teams are more like 40k. Don't start with anything except they do have 4 agility, and they have access to general agility skills. Every player on the elf team, on the high elf team, has 4 agility. That's kind of the main point that the main reason that you played them. I also went ahead and took a thrower in this match. 4 agility, has access to general agility and passing skills, which is very nice. Lots of different build options that you can make with a player like this. Also starts with pass. This gives me a free reroll on any failed pass throw and safe throw, which means that if a pass that I make is intercepted, I make a new non-modified agility roll. If successful, the interception is canceled and the pass continues as normal. In addition, if I fail a throw with the ball on any roll other than a natural 1, I manage to keep hold of the ball and I don't suffer a turnover. This is really nice because it means that I can go ahead and make passes with this player and not be too worried about whether or not it's actually going to end my turn. So it allows me to be, much more liberal with my passing attempts, which I'm very liberal with them. The other player that I went ahead and took was going to be the Blitzer. I have 2 of these. That's all I'm able to have. Pretty simple. 4 agility, starts with block, has access to general agility skills, does not have access to strength skills. Important to note, I only get those on doubles, so it's unlikely that this is going to be some kind of player that turns into a killer, as opposed to blitzers on most other teams, which do have access to strength skills. The High Elves can also get a catcher, which I did not opt to start with here. They just 4 agility to start with catch, 8 movement, very nice, 8 movement, general agility skills. Other than that, you can have 4 catchers and you can make some pretty nice builds for them that let them fill different roles, but High Elves are a pretty basic team other than that. You're mainly playing for the fact that you have nice passing ability and you have high ag, which you're going to see in this match the difference that having 1 extra agility makes. Moving on to the Amazon team, 3 different players available. Sorry, 4 different players. As I said, every player on the Amazon team starts with dodge, which is really nice. Makes them harder to hit, makes their dodging a little bit more reliable. First off, you have your linemen, or your line women in this case. Nothing special here. 3 strength, 3 agilities, 7 armor. All Amazon players have 7 armor, so they are lower than average armor, whereas the High Elves have 8 armor. Only has access to general skills on this player. You also have your thrower, dodge, and pass, has access to general and passing skills, not agility though. You will find that the only player on the Amazon team that actually has access to agility skills, despite the fact that they all start with dodge, is the catcher, who also starts with catch, of course. And then, of course, they have blitzers, which start with dodge and block, have access to general and strength. As I've said in the past, dodge and block is just about the strongest possible skill combination in this game, in my opinion. It makes you very hard to hit. It increases the chances you're going to be hitting other players. The fact that Amazons, all of their players, have access to general skills means that it's very easy to get block as a skill and turn all of your players into blodgers like this, which can be pretty devastating. So, as the Amazons tend to level up if they're getting block a lot, not that they necessarily should be getting block on every player. There are other skills they could be going for that might be more useful, but block and dodge is a very powerful combination. Alright, really that's all there is to say about the team, so I'm just going to go ahead and hop right into the replay. Okay, here we are. I lost the coin flip, and it was decided that Amazons were going to receive the ball first, so I went ahead and made my defensive formation here. Off the bat, you'll see that I brought 3 rerolls. Amazons brought 4. I did not bring an apothecary this match. I opted not to start my team with one because I wasn't too worried about players dying in my first match. That's a bit of a risk to take, especially considering that high elves tend to have more expensive players. I could end up losing a lot of money off that, but frankly, in my experience, I wasn't worried about it. I have 8 armor. I was confident I would probably be fine. Now, I imagine I'm going to have a lot talked about this match because, as I said, this is my team, the High Elf team, Bel-Hathor University, which means that I have a pretty good idea of what was going through my head when I made all these decisions. So, right off the bat, I'm just going to go ahead and throw the skills up on the screen just because all these players look the same. It'll make it a little bit easier to keep track of everybody. So, my first thought was I'm playing defense. I know the Amazons are not a high agi team, so they aren't super great at dodging, but since they do have the dodge skill, they can be, you know, somewhat reliable. So I was a little bit worried about getting pushed on the flank, so what I did here is I kind of set up my players in a way that my tackle zones were providing a lot of coverage on the flank so that when it happened, there were still gaps to be had, namely right here. Probably could have knocked a person in and ran right past if you felt daring. And I did leave my center pretty weak by doing this, but I was pretty confident that my elves could show up wherever they were needed and kind of cover any kind of gaps that that arose out of this. And then Amazons responds here. Going first lays out a pretty aggressive formation, allows him to get a lot of hits on the first turn. Opening throw, cheering fans, I got an extra team reroll, which was very nice. Not a very good kick, to be honest. It's pretty mediocre. Starts off, picks the ball up first with the thrower, gets it. It's always nice to have the ball on your thrower first so you can kind of move your catcher to a better position than where they started. Now, like I said, Amazons do have access to 4 blitzers, and this player's taken all of them, which is kind of rough because dealing against 4 blitzers is not very fun. And like I said, my center line is just going to get demolished immediately. I left it pretty weak. There were a fair amount of 1-die rolls in this match, mainly by the Amazons, which, you know, I felt the dice might have been a little bit loaded, but, you know. Getting a lot more hits than I would have thought would have been coming out of 1-dice rolls, but that's how it is sometimes. As you can see, they went for pretty much every hit possible, which is probably a good move. Elves have 8 armor, high elves do, so they're a little bit reliable, but, you know, they could still get injured pretty easily. I went ahead, stood my players back up and marked who I could because I'm just looking to slow the advance right now. And then I was looking to see where I could take opportunities to start flanking around. Obviously, for me, the right side was wide open, so I moved these guys right in. I'm pretty liberal with my dodges as well in these players. I have an 83% chance to move through tackle zones, so I was not worried about getting tripped. So where I could cut corners to try and gain some ground, I was doing it. Like right there. Move right up on the ball carrier immediately. I was being very aggressive this match. This is something that you can do when you have 4 agility on every player. You are not as afraid about getting knocked down when you go to try and dodge through a tackle zone. So immediately I'm marking the ball carrier and getting ready to try and steal it so I can go for the end zone. Also, flanking my players around allows me to easily support against the ball carrier and stop the enemy players from reinforcing. Fortunately, Amazon player comes in, knocks my blitzer off the ball, and starts creating a gap on the left side of the field. Now, right here, I probably, if I were the Amazon player, would have pushed my elf the other way, which would have left an opening for players to start moving down the edge of the map. Moving him to the sideline right here, you could try and set up a thing to kind of knock him out of it, but it's unlikely that was going to happen, especially since every opportunity that I have when I see a player is in danger, I'm going to dodge them out of the way because I know that they can do that. So unless you really lock them in there, it's going to be pretty hard to actually knock an elf player off the side of the field. Starts lining up the Amazon players right in the middle to hit all these guys out of the way, create an opening for the ball carrier to come through. Moves into the center field and has, you know, the makings of a cage going on. Now, the opportunity that I capitalized on right here is that all of the Amazon players are really clustered in the center of the field, but they're also kind of spread out in this thin line. So while they are all supporting each other, I can kind of just start picking off from the ends and pushing them strategically to make my way to the ball carrier. In addition, because I don't have any players that are really hard locked down in tackle zones, I can send my guys wherever they need to go to get the job done, especially these guys on the outside here who don't really have anybody on them. They can easily run around, flank, and envelop the enemy team, and it doesn't really matter how many players you'll have covering each other. It is not a good idea to let your team get surrounded because you're just gonna get outmarked. When you're surrounded, it is very difficult for you to get free marks on other players to increase your rolls, whereas for them it becomes very, very easy, and you'll see that happening here. Right there, I move a guy in, get a 2-die block. Doesn't get a hit, but I do push her towards the ball carrier to slow the ball carrier down. I start moving my players around to mark wherever I can for these easy hits. Another 2-die block. As I've said before, try to go for 2-die blocks wherever possible. First injury of the match. That was pretty lucky for me. I felt good about that. Of course, like I said, Amazons have 7 armor, so they are more prone to injury. And now I've completely wrapped my team around. And you can see what I've done here, like I was talking about. Mark the end and hit. Knock her down. I could follow through with this guy. That's a KO. Another player off the field. Now he's marking the next player. Hit her. Get another KO. She's out. I have a massive player advantage now. These were pretty lucky rolls, all things considered. But even if I wasn't getting the KOs and the injuries, this is still the kind of strategy you want to make when you're setting up your players to go against a large group like this. You need to pick them off one by one. Now that I knocked that player out, this guy that made the punch is now marking on this player, on this line woman here. So my player over here can punch her, and then this guy can punch her, and just one by one, you're going to be knocking every player down. This is a really bad situation to be in where the Amazon player is right now. It's one of the reasons why when you're making a play with the ball carrier, you don't want to overcommit too many players to one spot, and you want to keep some off on the sides that are either marking or using their tackle zones to kind of strategically block your opponent from moving their players in like this, because otherwise this is what starts to happen. Breaking out of this is pretty difficult, especially since I just took out 3 players. And as Bob says, when you're cracking the cage, you got to peel the layers away just like an onion. So start from the ends, work your way around. That's exactly what's happening here. Gets the move, gets the ball carrier out of the way. Now she's kind of ahead, but now she's a little bit undefended, and you only have a couple of players that can come and support. So you have to think about, because I have so many free players in this situation, you really have to think about what angles I'm going to be approaching from. My entire team is basically unmarked, and I can move all of them. So where would the most effective wall be to set up your tackle zones? This is definitely one area over here. Probably would have moved this player over one just to further stop my blitzer from coming in. And maybe would have moved the catcher, I would say, perhaps over here, to kind of stop my guys from coming around to the front of the ball carrier like this. Currently, with the way the tackle zones are set up, it's pretty easy for me to, you know, for instance, move this guy over here to a corner, move this guy over here to a corner, and then you have 2 people marking the ball carrier. But if you moved her over here, it would be a lot harder for my guys to come through, especially if you kind of overlap your tackle zones in a way that I can't just get easy one dodges. When you're playing against a high agi team, I've said it before, they're going to dodge through your tackle zones. You need to force them to make as many dodges as possible, because just like going for it rolls, eventually you're going to fail them, and that's going to ruin the strategy. So if you could force them to make multiple dodges to get where they want to go, you can cause them to just hurt themselves instead. And here I just started moving my players around, first focusing on cutting off where the ball carrier wanted to go, and setting up so that she's going to continuously be marked. I specifically hit from this angle in case I wasn't going to knock her down. She does have dodge, and I didn't feel I probably was going to knock her down. So now I'm setting up my players, anticipating where I'm going to push her towards, so I can keep getting hits over and over. So that way, even if I don't knock her down on the first hit, I still have multiple other hits that I can keep attempting. And now you can see, once again, I basically have my entire team around the ball carrier, whereas the Amazon team is cut off from supporting her. Of course, going for the hits where you can. One die blocks are an inevitability at this point. Probably the best thing that could be done here is having the... No, unfortunately that roll failed. I would say the best thing that could have been done here, you know, the Amazons, they're not a high agi team, but they do all have dodge, so they are more reliable at dodging. Right here would have been a touchdown opportunity, and probably a pretty decent one. You have the thrower right here, standing right next to the catcher. That's going to be a handoff, and even though you are in the tackle zone of another player, that's only going to lower the chances of catching the ball by 1, so I think that would have brought it down to a 50% chance to catch. And since you're passing to the catcher, she has a free reroll on that catch. You have more rerolls to use. There definitely is the possibility here that the thrower could have passed to the catcher. Catcher could have dodged, gone straight for the end zone, and gone to touchdown. And considering how outnumbered the Amazon team is at this point, I think that probably would have been the best play. I'm not going to say it was a guaranteed thing, but it probably would have been fairly likely. There's not a lot of factors here that could have stopped that play, and that's more on me not really accounting for the catcher than anything else, to be honest. But unfortunately, going for blocks and dodges instead didn't work out, which means that now I get to go for free hits. And like I said, you can see that I kind of strategically placed my players in a way that allows me to just chain hits together over and over until I knock the ball carrier down. Unfortunately, the ball bounced to the player I just attacked with, giving him the ball. Not really what I wanted, because what I was trying to do was to have the ball fall in open space, and then I was going to have this lineman pick it up, take it over here, and pass it to one of these two players, who was then going to run off in the corner towards the end zone and get away from the action. But didn't pay off. Didn't work out the way I wanted to. And you can see how often dodge is coming in handy when I'm attacking these Amazons. They just really, they don't want to go down. It can be very annoying when you're playing against a team like this. But now I got all the Amazons off my ball carrier, and I'm kind of free to do whatever I want. Going for the hits now because I'm able to. Unfortunately, they're both down with the thrower, but it results in a kill. The mold has struck again. Brittany Murphy, dead. Third death of the league. Luckily, Amazon's brought an apothecary, so she's fine. She lived. Still, it was fun to see. Mickey one pump chumber getting injured, unfortunately. Luckily, it's only badly hurt, so only for this match. Goes for the attack on the ball carrier, gets them both down, and they're both injured. Celebrimbor Williams out for the match. Unfortunately, the Amazon line woman got a pinched nerve, so she misses the next game, whereas my elf, no long-term effect. And then the ball bounces to my blitzer, so I still have control over it. That's one of the benefits of having a lot of team members around your ball carrier, is if they do go down, the ball is probably going to land on one of your team members. And since all my guys have high agility, they're pretty likely to catch. Now here, I'm just trying to clear off the tackle zones from where my ball carrier is so I can make a play. You can see I run. I made a short pass. I didn't have to do that. I specifically did it because I knew it was reliable and I wanted the skill points. And then I run the blitzer off as far away from the enemy team as possible. That's how I secured the touchdown. You know, I could go just straight for the end zone. I could go for this corner. But all things considered, that's going to be closer to where the enemy players are. So by going to the other corner of the field, that allows me to just make enough space where I hopefully am not going to be followed. And then I could just focus on punching. Are High Elves a bashy team? No, not really. But in this situation, especially since I'm playing against a team that has a bunch of 7 armored players, you know, if I can get hits, it's pretty likely I'm going to get injuries, which is free skill points for me. So that's what I started doing here. And my plan at this point, if I remember correctly, was to basically just turn this into a punching match until the end of the half so that I could try and farm more skill points. Thrower comes in to close the distance. And some good rolls start happening for the Amazons. Which meant that my elves were now being put at a disadvantage. And like I said, you know, my elves, they can kind of take a hit. They have 8 armor, but they only have 3 strength, so I'm not going to be winning a lot of 1-die blocks against blitzers like this. And I think at this point I may have decided that, no, I guess I kept punching. At a certain point, I do need to think about when it's time to cut my losses and not risk getting hit even more. I did send one elf over to stop that thrower from interfering with my ball carrier. Unfortunately, did not pay off. He tripped twice and injured himself. Galanran Damaki Jr. out for the match. That's the 3rd injury that I suffered so far in this match, so I'm starting to get to the point where I have a player deficit, which tells me that maybe I should stop doing what I'm doing and just go for the touchdown. Luckily, the attack was made with thrower and not a blitzer, so the odds of me actually getting knocked down were pretty low. Actually, it wouldn't have mattered anyway because I also had block. Turnover from the going for it? Can't remember. Nah, that one worked out. Ah, but that right there. Rolled skulls. So at this point, I have 2 players coming from my ball carrier. It's probably not worth running out the clock too much. It is getting to the point where, you know, I'm playing with fire a little bit, so I decided to just go for the touchdown. You know, as I've said before, farming for skill points is nice, but at the end of the day, you need touchdowns to win the game. So if it comes down to it, I'm going to go for the touchdown. I would have preferred to do it on my final turn because I knew that the Amazons had knocked out players, which meant that knocked out players have a chance to wake up every time a drive ends. That's any touchdown or halftime. So when I get a touchdown right before halftime like this, that's another wake-up roll for those knocked out players and another opportunity that they are going to be back on the field and I have to deal with them again. So if I can save my touchdown for the final turn of the half, that allows me to avoid that happening and keep more players off the field longer. Unfortunately, it didn't pay off the way that I wanted to, so I was not able to do that. Perfect defense, but I didn't really need to use it. Again, this was a very mid kick. I didn't even bother switching up my defense because there's only one turn left for each team. I wasn't going to play for the ball, that's for certain. And when it comes down to these final turns, I'm just thinking to myself, how can I maximize my opportunities for skill points? Already, all my players that were marking other opposing players are down, so I'm not going to get hits that way. Really, all I have now is a blitz. So looking at this situation, I'm thinking to myself, is there a way for me to blitz the ball carrier and throw a ball to my teammate? And I did not see one, so I just went for the one hit that I could, and then after that... I end my turn. No point in doing anything else, no point in wasting my own time. So going into the second half, there was one thing that I was aware of, and that was that my blitzer, Dan the Elfman, had 5 out of 6 skill points because he got an injury, and he was also able to score a touchdown. So my immediate thought when I was setting up for this, knowing that I was receiving, was that I wanted to try and get a pass with him if possible, because that would level him up. Of course, I still opted to put my blitzers up front on the sides because I wanted to have a good formation. I felt that's where they get the most value. But if I was able to, I was going to try and make a pass with him on this half. Amazon's got a brilliant kick right there. One of the best you can get. Which was not ideal for me. Immediately I saw it was on the left of the field, so my plan was to kind of open up an alleyway on the left here, which you can see that I did. And then I was going to pass the ball along the left and try and run it to the end zone. Which unfortunately was to the blitzer that I did not want to score because he, or rather, not the one that I wanted to pass with. So already that was off the table. But you play with the hand that you're dealt. Fortunately, I didn't have the movement to get close enough for a decent move. Tried to maneuver my players here to set something up. Specifically what I was thinking here, I've moved players that I can to the right, and then I'm already marking this player, so she is unlikely to go reinforce this gap I've created where I'm going to throw the ball. And previously I had TJ Borderwall Desktop, my lineman, in between these two players, which I did not like. So I opted to move him over one so that he was only marking one of the players. That way there weren't any risks of him getting hit with a 2-die block. It would have been a little bit harder to get him out of the way. That way, all of these players are either marked or screened in a way that they cannot go and reinforce the gap that I'm trying to make. And hopefully on my next turn, I can come through and try to move the ball up that side of the field. Of course, given the player difference, I think Amazon's actually had one more player than me at the beginning of this half. It's going to be a little bit difficult for me to pull that off. I did not have a lot of people to use. Going for a roll fails, go for the reroll. Got to be careful with those. Moving the player behind to screen my players so they can't move to reinforce this gap. Very smart. Going for a 1-die hit with the catcher, probably not as smart. I would save that for the blitzers if at all. Now, normally I wouldn't want to keep my players like this, marking enemy players all the time, but I felt it was in my best interest to stop them from moving if I could help it. And since I'm not playing a super squishy team, I wasn't too afraid. Now I'm trying to move my players around into the back so that, once again, I can push on this left side because I was pretty confident I could move my throw over and make a pass to a player. Just like this. Now I have a player on the opposing side of the field, and I am hopefully stopping other players from reinforcing. I opted to put my blitzer right on the ball carrier here instead of putting him more to the right, stopping these players on the right from coming over and helping, because I didn't feel there was a position where he could effectively stop anybody from doing anything, and the most value that he would have would be right on my ball carrier helping with any block that came up. Not normally what I would do, but given my limited resources, that's what I opted to do. One die block over here on the blitzer, gets the hit. Amazons, of course, have the offensive advantage in this match due to the fact that they have 4 players to block and I only have 2. Not to mention all of their players have dodge, so it's actually a lot harder for me to hit the enemy players. That's why I had to use those 2 die blocks as much as I could. A 1 die block just wasn't going to pay off for me in any situation. Unfortunately, my ball carrier went down and the Amazons managed to sweep it up and created something of a cage here, and I did not really have any players nearby. Not ones that were available to really help, so I had to mark on the outsides as best I could so that I could try and get hits and once again kind of bust this cage open, but this was kind of an interesting situation where there weren't too many useful things I could do, so I was also trying to move players to the left here and just screen this area with my tackle zones to stop any kind of advance. I tried to move this player right just a little bit more to stop the ball carrier, but unfortunately the rolls just weren't going how I wanted them to, so there was a bit of an opening on the left that I was somewhat worried about. Step 1, get the players off the ball carrier, always a good move. You want to open the ball carrier up to make whatever play they can. And right here, you can see that I suffered from a little bit of a blind spot that I was not ready for. Takes the ball, hands off to the thrower, passes to the catcher on the other side of the field, right on the line of scrimmage with nobody covering her, runs straight from the end zone. This honestly scared me when it happened because I totally missed this. I didn't know the catcher was over there. I was not paying attention, so I had to go down and take a chance play. I knew nobody was going to reinforce this guy, so I just took the hit that I could. Opted to hit from the side specifically so I could hit her backwards. Now the problem, the one problem with that play, and one thing that definitely could have improved it, is if some players were available. I think there are 1 or 2 that probably could have avoided being moved, that could then be used to mark my players over here and at least try to force them into dodge rolls or potentially move in a way, if possible, to stop them from coming to now and attack the ball carrier. Because while the ball did just move halfway down the field towards my end zone where I didn't really have anybody, it also meant that the ball carrier is now exposed and alone. So it wasn't too difficult for me to move my players down here to try and stop her, but it was still worrying. I couldn't get players on all sides like I wanted to, which meant that there was the possibility of a dodge going straight for the end zone there that I was definitely worried about. And this is kind of the risk that you run when you make a play like this, is that now you've put your talk about this in a second. You've kind of put your ball carrier in a situation where they are not able to get any kind of assistance. Now, you can see what ended up happening is that in response to me moving all my players down, Amazon start moving their players down and try to clear people out. And the big misplay of this turn, in my opinion, is once again, I think there was an opportunity for a touchdown right here that should have been taken. It wasn't going to be guaranteed, but it's going to be a 67% dodge chance. You have the dodge skill, you have a reroll, you have the ball. It would have been 2 going for it, or one going for it roll to get into the end zone. But that's a potential touchdown right there, just like it was in the last half. And I think right there definitely should have been the immediate move. Because if you go for the touchdown and you fail, the ball's still on my side of the field. It's going to take me time to move it to the other side, even if I do gain control of it. It would have been worth the risk, in my opinion. So, should have avoided going for that hit, even though you did knock out Balake Oxenfree. And should have just gone for the touchdown. Then, of course, like I said, strategically pushing the player in a way that allows me to get multiple hits. Trying to knock backwards where I can to stop that touchdown opportunity. Moving my players in front. And now at this point, it's very unlikely that touchdown is going to pay off. Last turn was really the opportunity to get it. And unfortunately, the entirety of the Amazon team is on the other side of the field. I probably didn't need to move that guy like I did. Although what I was trying to do was get him free so I could start moving him to the right side of the field for a pass from my thrower so that I could get a touchdown pretty quickly. Because you would be amazed how quickly High Elves can get the ball down the field with passing. Luckily, double skull roll, Alicia Silverstone got knocked out, so not a whole lot done with that turn. Like I said, I immediately stand this guy up. Now he's in range of the end zone on his next turn, and I specifically moved him there because I knew that even if he got knocked down again, he would still be in range of the end zone, even with the reduced movement, which meant that I could lift him up, throw him to the end zone, and then pick up the ball and pass to him. Start going for the ball carrier again. Once again, trying to strategically move her in a way that I can just keep going for hits. And I opted to actually go for a crowd surf here. Got the injury, but unfortunately, because it's a crowd surf, I'm not going to get any skill points out of it. At least I don't think I did. No, I did not. Simon 2-ball Rogers, still 0-6. Pick up the ball with my thrower, and you can already see that I am trying to set up for that throw. This has been my plan, turns in the making. Push that player out of the way so that I'm marking more of the Amazon players, stopping them from doing anything. I'm occupying 4 players with only 2 back on that side of the field, so I'm feeling pretty good about that while I'm making plays over here. Gets the hit. Unfortunately, Dan the Elfman is injured, which means that he's not going to level up this match. But luckily, all my injuries so far have only been badly hurt, which means it only lasts for this match, and they'll be back in the next game, which is good for me. But it also means the Amazons are getting a decent amount of skill points. Gets a hit on Hootenanny Squibbles IV, my player that I was hoping to get in the end zone, but like I said, I specifically moved him there because I knew that was the bare minimum needed to get to the end zone. If I were the Amazon player here, definitely would have noted the fact that this guy's been inching over here. He's all on his own, and you can see that my thrower has the ball. You can tell that I'm setting up for a play to throw to him. Knowing that with that hit, 6 movement, that means when he stands up, he's going to have 3, 2 going for it. This is the bare minimum that he needs to be at to get that touchdown play like I'm going for. If this guy was pushed down to the next line, he would have been out of range for what I was trying to do. So you got to be aware of stuff like that when you see somebody's trying to sneak a player for a strategy like this, and try and counteract that. So instead of pushing to the side, should have pushed down. Maneuver my blitzer around, 1 player off the ball carrier, get the hit. Get the next player off the ball carrier. Now I don't have to worry about any dodge rolls, even though they were likely to succeed. Move my guy into the end zone. Have to do that first before I can throw to him. Luckily, the rolls pay off. And then, like I said, ball carrier, get as close as I can. and make the pass. Get the free reroll on the pass, and he catches it. Easy touchdown by Aaron, Cable Car, and Hootenanny Squibbles the fourth. Of course, I do have 4 injuries here, but luckily we're towards the end of the match, so even if I am suffering from a player deficit, it's at the point where I think I'm okay with it. Especially since both of the knocked out players just got back up. So now what I'm doing is I'm kind of looking at the situation here. I have 1 turn left in this match and 1 reroll. The most I'm going to be able to do is maybe get some hits, so more than anything, I should probably be looking to defend my players. If this were a bashy team, I would move every player that I can, especially the important ones, literally to the end zone so that they are completely out of range of any attacks, and I would only leave my G linemen on the front that I don't care about. But considering it's Amazons, they don't have any skills, I wasn't too worried about that, so I opted to see if I could go for some more hits instead. And of course, it seems that the Amazons were thinking the same thing. Both teams get an extra reroll. And that was a really good throw for me, or kick rather. If the ball were up more against the line of scrimmage, there possibly could have been the opportunity for a touchdown by Amazons. But when you throw that far back, just wasn't going to happen. Now, if the thrower could have gone in range to pick up the ball and then throw it to one of the people at the front, that would have been kind of scary, and I would have had to respond to that. But like I said, luckily it didn't happen. All these hits happening on my Elves, I was a little bit concerned that one of them was going to get injured again, but luckily none of them did. And then, of course, because of how this has been set up, I have 1 turn left. There's only 1 move I can make. I can make a blitz, and then I'm pretty much done. Although I will admit, I am setting up my players here for a foul because I thought it would be funny to get another injury. This foul would not net me an injury, but, you know, could have tried. Joey Tento's Jibbs Jr. goes off the field. Now, I think that's actually the first foul that's been featured in any of these videos so far. So I guess I'll go over it real quick. Just watch a little replay here and I'll explain how this works, because I believe I meant to do that in the last video with the Goblin team, but it never came up, so I didn't do it. So let me just explain exactly how fouling works. And while I'm at it, since it's relevant, I'll go ahead and explain it, how injury rules and everything work, since it's kind of related to this. Okay, so every player has an armor value. When you knock them down, or when you foul them, you make a roll, 2d6, and if you roll more than their armor value, in this case it would have to be 8 or higher, you break their armor, which means that you roll for injury. Now, normally, when you just hit a player by blocking and you knock them down, this would be a normal 2d6 roll plus any modifiers like Mighty Blow or something, but otherwise nothing else. When you are fouling, you get a +1 for every unmarked friendly player around the person you're attacking. Since I had 3 players here on this person, and I went to foul with my player, that means that I had to roll a 5 or higher, I believe. So you can see I make the roll. And then you're probably wondering, why did I get sent off? I did get a 5 or higher, I rolled a 4, right? If I roll a 5 or higher, I would then roll another 2d6. The only modifiers being Mighty Blow or any skills related to that. And if I rolled a 1 through 7, I think that's a stun. I think 8 and 9 is a knockout, maybe. I can't remember the exact numbers. And then I think anything above that would have been a casualty or an injury. you know, like where the player's out for the whole match and they might suffer a penalty or something. Now, why did my player get sent off? Well, fouling is technically against the rules, but you can still do it. And when you make that initial 2d6 roll to break the armor, you get sent off if you rolled doubles. And because I rolled 4 here, 2, 2, he got red carded. If you had a bribe, you can use that to avoid it, but I did not, of course. So fouling is a free action, by the way. It doesn't use up a blitz or anything. Last turn for the Amazon, so of course you go for the pass, get the easy skill point. And then really the only other thing to do here is go for another blitz, I suppose, and see if you can get injury. Nothing else you really can do on the final turn. Gets the hit. And no injury. And that right there is what I call hubris. It was the end of the game, and the other player decided to just mess around and keep moving their players and made a going for it roll. I will tell you, when you make a going for it roll, you can trip if you fail. And if you trip, you can have your armor broken. And if your armor is broken, you can get injured. And if you can get injured, you can die. I have 100% had a player die from tripping before by doing this, so I would really recommend that you don't do this. It's just needlessly endangering your players. Especially since that apothecary was already used. Anyway, that's the end of the match right there. MVP went to Celebrimbor Williams, who got injured, but he'll be back next. Linemen on both teams, not really the best thing. I ended up just giving this guy a kick because what else are you going to give them? If we look at the skill point gains, I got 20 skill points overall, looks like. 7 on a lineman, 4 on my thrower, 5 on a blitzer, 3 and 1. I can't remember if those guys are linemen or I think those are both linemen. And then a pretty nice 13 for the Amazons as well, spread out. So all things considered, it was a pretty good match for both teams. Like I said, even though I won, I think there were a couple of touchdown opportunities the Amazons could have taken that really would have changed the game. And, you know, potentially could have resulted in a win. I saw 2 very obvious touchdown opportunities that I think really should have been taken, for sure. But all things considered, it was a fun match, and there were some plays that really caught me off guard and had me worried, but it just ended up working out in my favor. All right, well, that was a bit of an easier one for me to commentate because once again, you know, kind of knew what I was thinking at the time, so didn't really have to question too much. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. See you in the next game.